All right. So this is our agenda for today. We'll be talking a little bit about culture. What is culture? Then we'll be going through some enrollment figures and demographics of K-State. We'll be going over a student story, and this is related to multiculturalism. Then we'll be going over some key terms, including biases, stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination, and the negative effects of all of those on our mental health. We also have some resources that we'll be going over and then talking a little bit about what we can do to counteract prejudice and bias. And we'll open up for questions at the very end.
So I've been asked to talk about some issues or challenges that multicultural students may have on the K-State campus. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about culture. And does anybody here have a definition of culture?
I see culture as like tradition or the history of something, what it was built on.
That's a great definition of culture. Culture is basically a group of people who share some common values, beliefs, and maybe some common behaviors. Some aspects of culture may be shared language, communication styles, some thinking patterns, and maybe even have some similar expectations about life. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little exercise with you where I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes, and this is not in any kind of creepy way, but I'm going to ask you to close your eyes so you can use your imagination, and we're going to take a few minutes just so you can think about what if you woke up tomorrow and you were from another culture, another ethnic group, or some other dimension of diversity. So as you close your eyes, I want you to think about what is that like when you woke up in the morning? Did you have Pop-Tarts? Did you have arroz con leche? Did you have some grits? What neighborhood are you in? Are you in college? Where are you going for the day? Just kind of take yourself through a day with a different culture. Did you wake up Hispanic? Did you wake up Asian? Did you wake up white? Okay. Now that you've had your little experience of what it would be like to be different, does anybody want to share what they thought or their experiences in your imagination if you woke up a different? If you go ahead and tell me what you think, then I'll share it so the rest of the group can hear it. Okay, so the comment was that our student here woke up in college and it didn't seem much different, except that maybe there were some different areas that you went to, correct? Okay. So the purpose in the exercise is to get you really thinking about what it would be like to be different. What are the things that would be changed in your inner circle? So some of those things that would be different if you woke up not being who you are today is the friends that you associate with, the people that you socialize, maybe even the foods that you prefer, the religion that you practice, how you dress, maybe the neighborhood that you live in, and maybe culture can even affect the job or the position that you have. So with that, I'm going to share some Kansas State demographics because I wanted you to kind of have that imagination of what it feels like to be different in a place where maybe the majority is not like you. And that's why I want to give you an overview of our K-State demographics. If you can see, K-State's total enrollment is 75% white, with about 16% being domestic multicultural students here on the campus. And also we have about an 8% international student population, okay? And then I also kind of wanted to show you the progression that K-State has made throughout the years. So from 2008 to 2017, there's been progress in our multicultural student enrollment, but there are some pockets of where our multicultural student populations have declined, for example, in American Indian, Hawaiian Pacific Islander, and we've even had some decline in our African American population, as well as in our majority population of our white students. We're down about 10% from 2008. And so I want you to kind of wrap your mind around, if you were not in the 75% student population, what that would feel like and what that would be like for you to navigate through a new system, okay? So I want to share a little bit about just how college students adjust. And part of that is that when students go to college and they're freshmen, they're super excited. They feel like, wow, this is great. I'm a freshman. Everything that I've worked hard for, now I'm here at K-State and I get to buy all the Wildcat and PowerCat paraphernalia that I want. Things are just moving along smoothly. I'm going to all the Week of Welcome events, and I'm getting lots of free stuff. I'm meeting new people. I'm going to parties. So this is a great achievement for our students, right? In terms of just general college student adjustment. Then what happens is reality kind of sets in about a month or two in, and students may have had a midterm, may have had some quizzes, a paper to do, and now they're kind of starting to freak out about, oh my goodness, college life isn't like high school. I need to spend some more time studying instead of meeting people and having fun and being social. So for most students, they can find those resources and they know who to go to and where to go to in order to get that type of assistance. But then there are other students that when they are experiencing these types of things and the majority culture is not of their culture, they have some trouble navigating the university and start feeling a little isolated, a little depressed, just kind of like a fish out of water, for lack of a better example. So that's kind of what some of our multicultural students go through. So some students adjust really well, and then some students end up being isolated, and that becomes a challenge for them. So in talking about that, I want to share a story so you can kind of get an example and a picture of a student that came to my office for assistance. And basically, I didn't know the student. She found me on the website and said that she needed to talk to somebody about the things that she was feeling here at K-State. She was a freshman. She was a Hispanic Latina student, and she did kind of what freshmen do. She came to campus. She was meeting a lot of friends, having a lot of fun, wasn't really managing her time well. So she started having trouble early on in her freshman semester in her academics. So she went to the person that she knew best, which was her academic advisor, which provided great resources on time management, study skills, things that she just needed to know on how to navigate her time better, right? Okay. So then there was another part of this story where the student also shared with me that there were some other underlying issues going on, because while she was going out, meeting people, having a really good time, her parents kept calling. She was avoiding their calls. She was not responding to their text messages. And part of that was because she had come from a very strict Hispanic background, where basically she should have been home by 9, even though she wasn't living at home. And so when she shared that story with her advisor, you know, unbeknownst to her, gave her some advice that in the end didn't work out that well, but just kind of talked to her about, look, you're 18, this is your college experience, you are now an adult, and you need to learn how to set boundaries with your parents, which she did, and it did not fare well for her. If you come from a very strict background and your family is very close and tight knit, they don't take to boundaries very well. And I can say that for my own personal experience, because I had to tell her, I said, girl, I know you think you're grown, but you're really not. And so I just had to share with her how you navigate your cultural experiences at home and your family, and you can still become independent and do all these wonderful things, but just kind of find a balance for it. Because what had happened is she had become depressed, and she really just didn't know where to go or what to do. So I kind of helped her navigate this situation. And my point in telling this story is because I think it's important for all of us to learn about others and their culture, their values, their beliefs, and their behaviors. Because if we're going to make multicultural students successful on the K-State campus, then we need to learn things in order to be more effective and how to show them and help them adjust to college. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Murda, for sharing that story with us. I'm going to be going over some of these key terms and over the next few slides. And I also have a video that I'll be showing about stereotypes. So some of the key terms that I'll be going over include stereotypes, prejudice, discrimination, privilege, ethnocentricity, and intersectionality. Before I pull up the video, I'm going to ask a question. What are stereotypes? How do you define stereotypes? Yeah, so stereotypes are standard expectations that you hold for others in your mind. What are some examples of stereotypes and how they have affected you or someone close to you? Okay, so our student said that he hasn't really been affected by stereotypes. And I have a video that shows some students and their experiences with stereotypes. I'm going to be playing that for us today.
What do you see when you look at me?
What do you see when you look at me? Do you see an illegal immigrant that doesn't belong in the United States? Do you see another Latina woman who can't speak proper English? You see, society sets me up, and we call these stereotypes. Yes, I am a proud first-generation Dominican American, and I grew up speaking Spanish in my household, but that never hindered the opportunity for me to learn English in the public school system, just like you. And although my English is better than my Spanish, that does not give you the right to make me feel any less of a Latina woman. So I ask you this one thing.
What do you see when you look at me? Do you see another quiet Asian kid? Another socially awkward geek? Someone who can do literally any math problem or draw any picture because of where he's from? See, society sets me up, and we call these stereotypes. Yeah, I'm Asian, but that doesn't mean I naturally excel at anything. I worked hard to get to where I am, and put in countless hours of practice to perfect my craft. When you say my accomplishments come from me simply being Asian, you reduce all my hard work and determination to nothing. So I ask you one thing.
What do you see when you look at me? Do you see a black woman who disowns her identity? Do you see an uneducated woman unaware of issues that plague her community? You see, society sets me up, and we call these stereotypes. Yes, I like to wear my hair in a variety of different hairstyles, but contrary to popular belief, the way that I wear my hair is no reflection of the knowledge and experiences that I possess about systematic oppression that stifles marginalized communities. It is an expression of my aesthetics and not a reflection of my scholarship. So I ask you one thing.
What do you see when you look at me? Do you see an entitled and privileged white girl who's had everything handed to her, never having to worry about adult responsibilities or social issues? You see, society sets me up, and we call these stereotypes. Yes, I am a white female, and yes, the color of my skin grants me privilege in my life. However, I do recognize my privilege, and I recognize that people of other cultures haven't had the social status granted to them. I am more than a bystander. I'm an ally. So I ask you one thing.
What do you see when you look at me? An aspiring rapper? A kid dreaming of making it to the NBA? You see, society sets me up, and we call these stereotypes. It's easy to assume that my dreams are to make chart-topping albums or game-winning shots. I am more than an entertainer. Funny thing is, you wouldn't know by looking at me that I'm one of 2 math majors on my campus that actually uses my intellectual capabilities to further my success in life. So I ask you one thing.
What do you see when you look at me? Do you see someone who's confused, with a mental disorder? Do you see someone who isn't a real man? You see, society sets me up, and we call these stereotypes. I know who I am. I have known since the age of 3. I may not have been born with the anatomy of a male, but that doesn't make me any less of a man. My body doesn't match how I feel on the inside, so what? How I feel should be more than enough to validate who I am. I'm so much more than what you see. I'm a proud trans man. I'm here to educate others and open people's eyes to those who are different. I'm here to break down the stereotypes of people like me. So I ask you one thing.
What do you see when you look at me? Do you see a rebellious white girl?
Do you see a Muslim who's also a terrorist with the goal to create violence and instability? You see, society sets me up and we call it stereotypes. Yes, I am a Muslim woman, but I strive every day to build a safe community that empowers individualism. Yet you rather believe the propaganda that the media pushes onto the world. Attributing one characteristic to an entire group of people encourages discrimination, and it's up to us to break the chains that divide our global community. So I ask you one thing, don't box me into. Don't box me into.
Don't box me into.
Don't box me into.
Don't box me in. Two.
Don't box me into.
Don't box me in. Two.
All right. What are some of your reactions to the video? He said that some stereotypes have some truth in them and they're very common of what we see. Any other reactions? How are biases and prejudice formed and maintained? These prejudices are learned. We learn these growing up from our childhood experiences. We learn them from our family, friends, authority figures, the media. And these stereotypes are assumptions that we make about other people, members of specific groups of people that are not always true or based on fact or our own experiences. So when we talk about culture, we talk about there are very many different aspects of culture. And sometimes we think about an iceberg. What do we know about icebergs? They're big and solid, yeah. Cold, they melt, move around. So icebergs, they're big, solid. They're also so big that we only see about 10% of them. So the rest is what we don't see under the surface in the water. And that is, when we think about culture, we think about a lot of aspects of culture that we don't see, like our values, our beliefs, religion. There's lots of things that we don't see when we're communicating with someone else that makes them who they are. And then there are other things that we do see, like the tip of the iceberg. And those are like food, dress, even communication styles sometimes. So I'm wondering, when we think about icebergs, how do you think this image helps us understand culture and how it affects the way we behave? So we really don't know culture or everything that makes up someone's culture, and there's a lot more to it than we realize, and that's so true. There's another term called ethnocentrism, and that is the tendency to regard our own culture, our own values as better or more correct than others. And this is natural sometimes growing up. That's all we know. So sometimes we believe that our own cultures or values are better and are not aware of other cultures or values. And when we think about cultural conflicts or conflicts that happen between people, communication barriers, breakdowns, those tend to happen underneath the surface. They tend to happen because of our differing values, attitudes, beliefs. Another term that's important to know is discrimination. What do you know about discrimination? So looking down on someone and believing that they're worth less than they are based on being a member of a particular group. So yeah, discrimination includes two things. It includes actions based on prejudice, which are negative attitudes towards different marginalized groups. And it also includes the power to unjustly distribute resources through control of institutions, cultural attitudes, economy, and political systems. So it's the negative attitudes that we hold and the power that we have to discriminate or to provide unfair resources to certain groups. And discrimination can be active, it can be subtle, it can be individual, institutional, or cultural. So I've listed different forms of discrimination and oppression, and these are only a few: racism, sexism, heterosexism, classism, ableism, and sizeism. And a lot of these oppression terms, they are against different groups that are considered to be marginalized. And these marginalized term means excluded, ignored, to the outer edge of a group. Also, there is an important term to know called privilege. What do you think privilege is? So privilege is something that many of us hold. It's part of our identities if we are members of the majority group, like white, heterosexual. Privilege is something that is unearned. It's a special advantage that we have based on being a member of a group that we're born into. And it is supported by formal and informal institutions of society. So it's not something that we earn, but it's also not something that we place upon us actively. But it can be something that we support ourselves, and it can be unfair to other members or other particular groups of people. And the term intersectionality, so we all hold many different cultural identities that are important to us, and these identities can be intersectional. So, for example, I am female and I am Indian American, so those are two different identities that I hold, and they both are in the marginalized group. And also I am heterosexual, so that's a privilege that I hold. So what are some identities that you hold that are privileged and marginalized? Yeah, so our student said being white, he holds a lot of privilege, social privilege. Any other areas of privilege or marginalization? So if someone holds a cultural identity that is marginalized, they tend to experience minority stress. And minority stress is chronic psychosocial stress that is experienced due to being stigmatized, discriminated, prejudiced against. And this can interfere with college students, particularly because it can challenge their adjustment to college. It can affect them finding a sense of belonging, a group at college. It can affect their academic performance, and it's definitely a stress that many hold. Some other examples of stress that certain race, ethnic groups hold include pressure to speak for their entire group, feeling invisible on campus, off campus, racial tension, nonverbal racist acts, and low faculty expectations because of stereotypes, or even expecting that their campus will be negative and hostile towards them. So these are all important to keep in mind when we're interacting with others who are different than us. And based on research, minority stress has found to lead to or worsen mental health concerns, including depression, suicidality, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. And there's also tends to be a stigma about seeking help, which means that a lot of race, ethnic minority members or other members of minority groups tend to feel pressure to succeed and not want to seek help or admit that there's something going on. I'm gonna see if I can pull up another video. some of your reactions or feelings as you were watching that video? So the video showed a little bit about how to help or deal with people who have a mental illness. And I'll be talking next about the resources that we have on campus. And one of the resources, confidential mental health resources, counseling services. There are some specific resources for different minority groups, including a spectrum group, which is group therapy for sexual minority students or students identified with a sexual minority. We also have others, group therapy, including understanding self and others, and graduate non-traditional students. We also provide individual therapy and self-help resources on our website. So what can you do to challenge your biases, privilege, or become an ally? So one of the ways that you can challenge your biases is, first of all, to become aware of them. And there is a social attitudes test called an implicit association test online that you can take, and it shows different attitudes that we hold towards different social groups. There's also another ways of becoming aware of your privilege include just self-reflection and asking non-judgmental, curious questions to other people, just opening up the conversation to people who are different than you. This can include active listening and allowing other people to speak and share their stories. There can be a lot of feelings that we can hold when we're talking about all of these topics, including guilt, shame, defensiveness. And it's important to acknowledge that these conversations can be uncomfortable. We make mistakes. We all have biases, and it's hard to get away from that because it's difficult to change. But if we're willing to make those mistakes and to be uncomfortable, then we can learn from them and practice challenging them and seeing them in others. Another way we can become an ally is by acting collaboratively with target groups. And there are different clubs on campus, different groups you can join and become a part of. And be thinking right now about one way over the next week that you can open up the conversation about diversity. All right, so now I'm going to be opening up for questions. All right, there are no questions, so we can end here. Thank you for listening and being interested in this topic today.